Alabamians rebuked a candidate endorsed by President Trump for the second time on Tuesday. First, Republican primary voters didn't throw their support behind Senator Luther Strange, who was appointed to Attorney General Jeff Sessions' open seat. Instead, they picked former Judge Roy Moore as their nominee. Last month, the Washington Post first reported on allegations of sexual misconduct against Moore, and last week, President Trump announced he was supporting him. But Democrat Doug Jones narrowly won on Tuesday in Alabama. He will be the first Democrat in 25 years to hold a Senate seat from that state. Zeke Miller is a White House reporter for the Associated Press and joins me now from Washington. So, Zeke, President Trump tweeted Wednesday that the reason he originally endorsed Luther Strange was because he didn't believe Roy Moore would be able to win in the general election. He also said the deck was stacked against Moore. Why does the White House think Roy Moore lost?
You know, there's some mixed explanations coming out of the White House right now, and even from the president himself last night. In the immediate aftermath of that defeat, the president tweeted that the write-in votes, the largely of Republicans who weren't happy with the two options afforded to them on the ballot, that made a difference. And in fact, they did. It was sort of a protest vote of Republicans who probably, a lot of them would have probably voted for Moore and didn't because it was Moore on the ballot. And then that was a sort of a subtle attack against Republicans who weren't coming home, who were objecting to the candidate the president endorsed. And then now the president sort of taking a more conciliatory tone towards Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and sort of the more establishment type Republicans saying, maybe you guys were right. We should have stuck with Luther Strange early on. That Moore was just too extreme, had too much baggage, had all of these allegations against him. That made him a bad candidate, even in a deep red state as Alabama. That said, there are a lot of recriminations going on around the White House over the predicament the president found himself in there. But there's truth to both of those explanations.
Well, some top Republicans have placed blame on Steve Bannon. Has the White House weighed in on that?
The White House is not right now. They have not said if the president has spoken to Bannon after Moore's defeat. Certainly, he and the president are close. They share. He was the chief strategist of the president. The White House worked on the campaign. The president resisted the notion that Bannon was sort of somehow the puppet master, the puppeteer in the White House early on. Fired him over the summer when John Kelly came in. But they are still close. They talk frequently, and he is sort of the president's id. He reflects sort of the gut instincts of the president. Even when the president, remember, was down in Alabama campaigning for Luther Strange right before that primary, he sort of saw that Moore was going to win and sort of mused openly maybe he should have been endorsing the other guy. That's the Steve Bannon effect. So yes, they're trying to distance themselves a little bit from this Bannon movement, particularly as Republicans. They need Republican votes on tax reform and keeping the government open and keeping Senate Republicans happy. But certainly there are a lot of ties that can't just be a race off of one election night.
Well, Senator-elect Jones said that President Trump invited him to the White House and congratulated him on his win. Does the White House think it can work with Doug Jones when he enters office?
I think they have a lot of leverage over him. He's a Democrat in a very, very, very red state, despite the results yesterday, and that means that they have that Jones from the very get-go will have to be looking at every vote from if he wants to run again in 2020 for him, he's going to have to vote differently. I mean, senators like Joe Manchin, West Virginia, have been the thorn on the sides of Democrats, their fellow Democrats, for a while because they do come from red states. This is going to be a step beyond that, even in terms of their. It's not necessarily leverage, but there's going to be political pressure on him to vote with Republicans at least some of the time, and that means that there's an opening for the president to work with him.
Well, meanwhile, the president is trying to get his own win by passing a tax reform bill before the end of the year. Is the White House worried about the Senate seat loss affecting its agenda?
They're certainly worried about it, not so much about taxes, because the news that they have reached what appears to be an agreement on a conference that would allow them to vote on that tax measure once again get through the Senate before Jones is seated. But on things like keeping the government open in a short-term measure next week, and then beyond that into next year, everything else from immigration to infrastructure, the other things that the president has been talking about. Certainly, they're concerned that their margin in the Senate has just decreased, and and going into a very difficult 2018 for Republicans. Even though the Senate's a little bit better for them with more Democrats on defense, certainly with the House, this is not what they were looking for. They're worried about this that maybe this is an omen of what's to come, and that they have a lot of work to do to shore up their support in Congress, because the worst thing for them and for the president will be Democrats controlling either chamber. That will sort of freeze his agenda, obviously, and also what comes with control of Congress of either chamber is subpoena power, and that would allow sort of the investigations to be used against them the same way we saw Republicans wield investigations against the Obama administration just a few years ago.
Also on Wednesday, Minnesota's governor announced that Lieutenant Governor Tina Smith was his pick to fill the Senate seat vacated by Al Franken, who resigned amid allegations of sexual misconduct. What can you tell us about her?
Obviously, the most important thing from a symbolic perspective is that she is a woman filling the seat of a man who was forced to resign because of alleged sexual impropriety. That is both a symbolic move, but also a very real, practical sign of the times of this national moment of national reckoning. Also, she's going to run again. Originally, it was not clear that she was going. It seemed that maybe there was going to be some sort of placeholder setting up an open seat in a year or so, and that is not the case. That she's going to run for that seat outright, and try to hold that. And this has obviously given her a leg up. So a lot of Democrats to defend a seat that Franken won by just really the narrowest of narrow margins back in 2010.
All right. CBSN political contributor and White House reporter for the Associated Press, Zeke Miller in Washington. Zeke, thank you.
Thank you.